Welcome to episode 15 of MudderRucker, the only podcast dedicated to Irish women's rugby. I'm Ailbhe O'Nolan.
And I'm Cian Mullor.
So the pool stage of the World Cup are done and dusted, and the business end of the competition now looms. Ireland face New Zealand in what must have been the most electric atmosphere ever in Brighton. Joining us to chat about the game and the knockout stages is our in-house expert in all things rugby, Chloe Pearse. Welcome back again.
Thank you. I lost the shell last week, and now after this weekend, I'm like another shell down. So I don't know how many I have left by the time this gets done.
I know the feeling. I can't even talk properly, but it's a sign of a good weekend, I suppose.
Yeah, it is indeed a good weekend that just needs, thank God it ended.
There's another one next weekend. We're not going to survive it, I don't think.
I actually don't even know how we're going back across. But look, we're going and we'll be there, and we'll be as tired and broken next weekend, but hopefully we'll be a little bit happier.
Yeah, hopefully. And with us as well to discuss all things Aotearoa Rugby is freelance journalist, women's rugby advocate, broadcaster, and host of the incredible podcast Full Credit, an absolute radiator of energy and the most passionate woman there is. It's Ailbhe Soper.
Kia ora koutou. What an introduction.
Doing my best to match your energy, but I don't think I have it in me.
We'll see how we go. It's a little bit later in the evening for me, so we'll see how much pep in my step I end up having.
So, Alice, you've been touring the length and breadth of England these past few weeks. How has it been, and how are the energy levels now?
Oh, look, it's been gorgeous. It's kind of a return and a catch up with a bunch of people. I lived here 6 or so years ago because I came over and I played in what was then the Tyrrell 15s. Played in the first 2 years of that. So it's been kind of walking back into a bit of an old life, which has been interesting. Revisiting folks, reconnecting with old teammates. Thank goodness for that, because they have been subsidizing this trip with all of their spare rooms. Bless them. But yeah, it's been very interesting to get around the town, see how the game is growing, and see, I guess, the roots that we started to see take hold at that time 6 years ago really starting to flower now. And yeah, that's been a very cool thing to see.
So, Alice, you've got I suppose, a long history with rugby. I believe you started playing at 13. What has your journey through rugby as a player and now at the other end with, I suppose, more of the advocacy and the journalism, how has that been for you?
Yeah, look, I'm conscious that I haven't actually introduced myself properly at the top, so I should do that very quickly, being that I am a proud Te Tiriti or Waitangi. I'm a tangata Tiriti, so I'm a white person from New Zealand, but I should do that introduction. So what I will say is, tēnā koutou katoa, he urio no Ngāti Kotirangi, Ngāti Airihi, Komo hoki. So my ancestors are from Scotland, from Ireland, and from Cornwall. E tipu aku oku mātua e Gore, but my parents are from Gore, which is a small town in the south of New Zealand. Engari, ko au he putiputi e puawai e roto e te whanganuiatara. But this beautiful blossom blooms in Wellington. Ko Ailbhe Soper tōku ingoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. So my name is Ailbhe Soper. So yes, my rugby journey started in Wellington because that's where I was born and raised. And obviously I've just dropped a little bit of te reo Māori there for you because it's important, as I'm sure your listeners well understand, to kōrero, to speak the native languages of the lands we live in. So always important that I do that, particularly as someone that has had such a gift of the proximity to the culture that I, grew up alongside. So yes, grew up in Wellington. That's where I first started playing rugby, because you're a New Zealander. It's kind of always there. You don't really get a choice or an opt-in. But started playing organised rugby. Yes, great research when I was 13. You might have heard me tell these stories before. So yeah, when I was 13, started at high school, because that was at that stage, that was kind of where most girls' inroads was in the high school scene. So I started at my high school. I was very lucky that my sports coordinator at school, who was our rugby coach, was also a legend of the local club scene in province. She played halfback for my town for a long time. So she picked me up and she pulled me into the club scene when I was 13 because there wasn't rules against that. So I started playing women's rugby early on. Played sevens first. Played Wellington women's sevens when I was 13, which is ridiculous. I don't know what the hell was going on there, but played that. Ended up playing 15s. I was an outside back for the first 10 years. Sevens, New Zealand rugby got rid of when I was 15, broke my heart, but thankfully because Marama, my high school coordinator, had linked me into the club scene, I kept connected with the community, so I transitioned into 15s more seriously. Ended up playing for my province, in my 20s, played for them from like 2014 through to my last season was like around 2021. And in the middle there, spent that couple of years playing over in England. So it was an interesting time as the thing, if you exist anywhere long enough, you come in with some frictions with some people that make decisions along the way. So as I've already outlined to you, New Zealand Rugby cut my first love, how dare they? And then brought it back and we had to audition with the Go for Gold program, which was quite the insult for all those of us who had been there from the beginning, loving the thing and just wanting to play it. So complicated and a part of our history that's already forgotten by many people. And subsequently found out that if you have a memory, if you can remember what happened and if you say what's happening, you can get into quite a lot of trouble in this country with our organisers.
Don't remind them of the truth.
Yeah. Might feel familiar, I'm sure, to those in the Irish women's game. So, we've had our own frictions. Things are interesting at the moment. I think I would say lopsided growth is where we're at right now. But yeah, my role these days, look, I'm only writing about things because somebody has to, and there's not enough of us that are there. My transition into this space was really as an outspoken player, because having come back from England, I had a very rosy view of English rugby from New Zealand, which I think like many of us do from, I'm sure a number of people do about New Zealand rugby from a distance. But it was only like spending that time on the ground in that space where you're like, there is a lot of positive here, but also the patriarchy is real and everywhere, and it's the same kind of bullshit roadblocks that we're encountering along the way. So when I came back, it just like, I guess, radicalized me further that I just didn't have any patience for it anymore. So I started saying things, and that outspokenness just led for people asking me to write things down. Didn't think that was something I could do, but turns out it was. And so that's why I now write a weekly column for a national paper here, and then also for myself and whoever else asks nicely. That's a lot of talk. That's a long intro.
That's wonderful.
wonderful.
That's absolutely fabulous. I think, you and I probably share some kind of moments, in around early COVID, getting very sick and tired of seeing the women underperform because they're under-resourced or they're undervalued within their union. And I suppose I entered that space by being outspoken and probably rubbing people up the wrong way at times. It's nice to be in the space that we're in now at the moment, where we feel like we're doing particularly well. We're on and up. I suppose, like you said, there's this rosy view of things in New Zealand. Oh, sure, you win World Cups like it's nothing, and for us, that's just this dream that we don't know if we'll ever reach. So it's hard to look at New Zealand rugby and see that you guys have the same roadblocks, but you do. And if you look back at the previous World Cup, it was a belated investment in the women's game and belatedly throwing resources at the women. And somehow you came out with another trophy at the end. Was that frustrating for you to see that that belated investment still rewarded so well, and maybe it was papering over cracks a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes success can be a terrible thing, because I think it manages to put a band-aid over stuff that's still the same issue, right? Like, and we've seen that. Really, I don't know, the results of, like, in the lead into 2022 was actually the issues we had back in 2014, but people not paying attention to, because we managed to kind of scrape through. Like, the thing I often frame it to people as is like, I fully believe we have some of the best rugby talent in the world, right? And so that's what kept us in touch with everybody else. But it's like these days you need talent plus program. And so our talent is covering, this much, gesturing a large chunk with my fingers. And the program is only this much, little squidge Whereas I would say the opposite is true for England. I think they have this much of program, big chunk, this much of talent. That's right, I said it. So that's how I think that equation works, right? Like, and so it's interesting watching all of the different countries and how they're spinning out at the moment, and how that kind of overall is adding to the the one or adding to the win. But I think if you want to know how dominant, truly dominant, New Zealand women's 15s could be, you only need to look at our sevens program, because that is the best example of our women being properly resourced. And that's because it's external funding. That primary funding comes from High Performance Sports New Zealand. So that's through like our Olympic funding rather than New Zealand Rugby. And as a result of that, that was the first and best form of professionalism that has been, a form of professionalism since, 2012, versus our women realistically only truly professional since the last World Cup. So that's the difference in terms of pay stuff. But that's, when I say truly professional, that's like quit your job money, because we always look at the retainer, not the top ups. But the unions always like talking to you about the full number. But again, retainer is the only thing that you can make a career decision on. So it's been an interesting thing also looking across the board in the way that some of these conversations are being had about, professionalism versus amateurism across some of these teams that are competing. I think we are being very generous to some unions by agreeing that they are calling their programs professional, when really it's anything but. You might just pay a couple of dollars here and there, but your attitude towards these women is still hugely amateur. And your programming beneath those top teams are also that. Whereas someone like Canada, for example, I would say their attitude towards their women, particularly from those within camp, is much more professional than a lot of people that are quote unquote paid.
It's interesting when you talk about that, tagging on that line of professionalism. A lot of people would look at the PWR in the UK and say, oh, they're all fully professional. They're not. Many of them will get, a few £100 as a match fee. They might get some boots. They might get, some resources during the week, but most of them work part-time jobs and have to. There's a lot of assistance in terms of getting part-time work, but it's very, very much semi-professional at best. It is interesting to hear, though, you talk about the union and the attitudes and the sevens program and how they've gone professional and how that's externally funded. All of that is mirrored here in Ireland. It's just fascinating to hear that. So we might just talk a little bit about New Zealand rugby and the club scene. The club scene seems to have taken off within the last few years, very much. Is it far ahead of where it once was, or is it there's still a lot of room for improvement?
The latter. So I think it's a reshuffling of cards rather than dealing anymore. That would be what I would say. So
Okay.
we like. So the pathway for a long time in New Zealand women's rugby was that you would rock up to your local club, at the grassroots level. You would play well enough there that you might have a crack at playing provincially, and so there you would be picked then for a Whare Cup team, and then you would play in that competition either in the top or the second div. It didn't really matter, honestly, in terms of your visibility for higher honours. And then if you were good enough there, you might get a shot at a final. But also I would say there's a little bit of an asterisk there with it. Whether it was overt or honestly just due to proximity, given that for a long time so few of our games were like televised or were accessible in other ways, there was definitely a geographic bias, I believe, to certain regions, because you just saw them more because of their proximity to where coaches were based, so that was like the pathway for a long time. Since in the year before, was it? Goodness, I'm trying to keep a bit of tabs of things. Or maybe it was the year of the Rugby World Cup when we had our first Super Rugby Opaki competition. We've had 4 years of it now, so whatever that is ago. Super Rugby Opaki was introduced, but you really can't call that anything other than like a Black Ferns development space, because it's a 6-week competition. So what is that really? They do give some money at start, and that money has increased. So initially in the first year, it was around, I think, 8,000 New Zealand dollars, which is around £4,000 that they paid to players to participate in that. That has now grown to, and it's flat rate, because we are different, I think, in that regard here in New Zealand, and that thing's essentially contracted. It's the version of unions you wish you had in other spaces. But anyway, they have that central flat rate. That grew to, I think last season it was around about 20. So that's around £10,000. But worth noting that that's what non-contracted Black Ferns get paid. Contracted Black Ferns get paid only £4,000 to play in OPIC. So that's a bit of cheekiness that they, again, hide within the detail. There's a lot of stuff that looks nice on the top line, get underneath. The real worry about that, though, in terms of where we're at developmentally in like this part of the world, is that the NRLW, the National Rugby League competition that's played out of Australia, their base rates are higher than that. So within 2 years, their minimum earning is going to be higher than the minimum contracted Black Fern. And that's to play a 12-week rugby league competition. So there's been a massive hollowing out of the talent pool below Black Ferns. All of the investment currently in this last cycle has finally been into kind of that top level, which is cool, but that grows certain players tall. It doesn't grow our talent pool wide. And so, yeah, you look over at the NRLW, at least 20 at first count of our next wave players are currently playing in that competition. And that's going to only increase next year. I mean, you've already seen that, the Black Ferns Sevens players are voting with their feet in terms of when they're coming off contract and they're not choosing to come play 15s. They're going to make money in the NRLW. And, I know of certain players getting paid higher wages and getting better benefits than our current Black Ferns captains in that competition, which is all very interesting because this, again, mirrors exactly what was happening to the men's game in this part of the world in the 1990s. It's just, apparently we're unable to see this because it's women rather than men. It's just comical.
Rinse and repeat.
Yeah, so we cannot possibly envision that these type of things would happen. So the positives that have happened since the last cycle, like the workplaces it grows, it definitely has the standards of professionalism. And again, I'm going to talk about attitudes specifically when I'm saying that. The professionalisms of attitudes in and around the administration of the Black Ferns team have massively improved. This cycle, I think we have seen the actual use of the cycle by a Black Ferns coaching team. I honestly couldn't tell you I've seen that before. In the past, that's probably been because things weren't resourced in such a way to allow that. It was very much like we've seen with certain teams at this World Cup, like MudderRucker, for example, who have had to assemble a high performance program and run it into this World Cup. So it's been that kind of thing for us in the past. So really beginning to see them use those contracts to target key positions, to develop depth in those roles, to then be able to pick from a more rounded roster to bring that team together to play for us at this World Cup. You can see within a process there if you've been paying close enough attention. So that type of stuff at the top is really good. Like I say, that piece underneath, very vulnerable from the NRLW looking at those current players, but even below that in the club scene. So the last couple of years, I've been coaching my local club, and I can tell you 6 of our players who are under 18 have been signed across into development spaces for NRLW. And again, I fully encourage those girls. The reality is economically right now too, and I'm sure that this is a similar story as well for Ireland v England, right? It is a better quality of life that can be offered overall if you're living in Australia than it is here in New Zealand. So it's really hard to say no to these kids and their families when they're being offered the moon and the stars to relocate over to Aussie, and everybody benefit from that economically, to say stay for a small chance at a black jersey here in New Zealand. So it's a very interesting time, and I just don't think enough has been done to address the lower levels. And I don't think you can really grow tall unless your foundations are rock solid. And I think at the moment, trickle down economics don't work, right? And neither does trickle down high performance planning. And that's very much the approach that we've been taking. But I guess it's the easiest way to get immediate results. So that's what they've opted for.
That's an amazing bit of background about the state of play in New Zealand. I feel like you should be running the show, Alice.
Have you ever thought of it? Have you ever considered
Yeah.
it?
Have they considered you? I think that's probably where the problem lies.
I mean, I think this is again the attitudes of things, right? Like people always say, "Oh, have you thought about working?" Look, in my 20s, I tried to work for rugby. I applied a million times to different roles. At that time, nobody was interested in women, right, in those spaces. So there was good luck to you. And then subsequently, yeah, again, the honesty of it all is not something that people appreciate. It's much too political. The place in which rugby occupies, and again, I know it's similar within Ireland, but the place in which rugby occupies within New Zealand's psyche is so intense. And I mean, I think that there's, to be fully transparent, like my past working history outside of this current iteration. I used to work in politics. Before that, I worked in event management and things. But so I'm fully aware that my choice to write about rugby and specifically women's rugby and also just women's sports in general is a choice to write about politics because it's the easiest way to do it. And the easiest way to write about New Zealand politics is to write about New Zealand rugby because those things are so deeply intertwined. And so there's so much that needs to be done around challenging what our identity is. I think our country is reckoning with that. Like for what little people might capture of our current political climate overseas, we're really quite having a real battle for that, I think, at the moment around what the soul of New Zealand is. And so it stands to reason that we're also having a bit of an arm wrestle around what the soul of New Zealand rugby is. So I think until we kind of this is the fascinating thing with rugby is I think it actually can inform more of that than I think they like to take. Well, let's say responsibility. They're more than happy to take the credit. They're less than happy to take the responsibility for. But yeah, in terms of me working in that space, I don't know. I think a few more people would have to die before they'd let me into the building.
There's that honesty.
Yeah.
Not a promise or a threat.
So just looking at the competition, with that kind of background that you've given us, what do you think are the chances of 3 in a row World Cup?
Bang on. The thing to understand about this team is we're a much better team than we were in 2022. So the coming into this tournament, if you looked at, I think the stats that I was crunching around the one coming in, I think it was 69% of our squad last time debuted just before that World Cup. So they debuted in that cycle. That has dropped right down in terms of this cycle. People I don't think were quite aware how chaotic between 2017 and 2022 was. We debuted 49 players during that period, which is insane. We've only debuted 23 and we had, a year less, but only 23 in this period. And it's been a lot more intentional. Again, it's made sense. People have kind of made the case rather than honestly during that period, it was like throwing a net out wide, pulling people in. Are you ready? No, chucking them back out again. There's a lot of one cap Black Ferns during that period. Whereas players that have debuted in this one, I mean, they're people like Layla Saiti, they're people like Kate Henwood, they're people that have become, essential part of the team. So I think it's been a lot more intentional in terms of those pieces. But that's also meant that, over 50% of those that played for us in 2022 have returned. The ones that are new new to the squad are people like Kelly Brazier, for fuck's sake, or people that might be new to 15s but are very well experienced within high performance. So we're talking Georgia Miller, we're talking Reece Podilane. And so those type of pieces, like coming back together, they're just a deeply experienced team. The woes we had, like the classic one as well, in terms of, again, that experience across piece. At the last World Cup, I think we only had one front rower who had played more than 8 tests for New Zealand. And this time around, we have 3 who are among our most experienced. So that kind of gives you a shade of just the core that is stuck together that have developed through this. So our ceiling is higher, much higher for this team. And the players that have come that are new and exciting are fucking brilliant. Players like Georgia Miller and Braxton Sorensen McGee are not just going to be brilliant at this tournament. They're going to be brilliant at the next 2. So like I say, the ceiling for growth is massive for this team. And we won't necessarily see them play the same high risk, high reward rugby, but that's because they don't need to. They don't have to play the same chances because last time that was kind of all we had because their set piece was rubbish. Like we couldn't scrum to save our lives. I'm not sure if people remember that. Our lineouts were kind of pretty patchy and our kicking off the tee was less than ideal. Those things have turned a corner. So we're a much better team than we were. We're always much mentally tougher. We're a great tournament country. Like us and the French do tournaments better than anyone, I think. Understand how to pitch our timing and build ourselves into the stuff and take the pressure as a privilege, which is a cliche people say, but I think actually we know how to live. So if we are fortunate enough to get past Canada and get into that final, we'll win it.
I love that confidence. Absolutely love that confidence. Amazing. Right, we might move into looking at just a quick glance at the results over the weekend. I think pretty much everything went kind of predictably. Canada beating Scotland, the USA beating Samoa quite well, but not by enough. Unfortunately, they're out of the competition. I think Wales losing against Fiji, not exactly too much of a shock. Unfortunately, Wales just nowhere near the boil at all coming into that competition. England beating Australia 47-7. I thought England would do a lot more than that. I wonder maybe they were tiring a little bit. It's hard to tell. Japan beating Spain again, which they did in the World Cup warm-ups. Again, no shock. Italy finally performing, winning 64-3 against Brazil. I think Italy needed that in their exit of the competition. And then looking at France putting 57 points on South Africa. Again, not too shocking. So we might move into a piece that Cian has arranged on the culture of the women's game.
Yeah, no, I know, Ailbhe. I know you and Chloe certainly thought that there was a very special occasion in Brighton last weekend, and I know,
Incredible.
Alice, you've been sharing some wonderful energy from grounds all across the tournament, and it was just something I wanted to dive into. Is as myself, as someone who's finding their way into the women's game from the men's game, there's just something different about the women's game, and not just on the pitch, very much all around it, and. Chloe, if I come to you first, to you, what does the word community mean in the context of women's rugby? And when have you felt it most powerfully?
Do you know what's funny is before you actually asked that question, I was saying he's going to ask me for a word, and that was the word I'd picked was community,
Yeah.
and that was honestly, yeah, that's what I was like. You're going to ask me pick a word, and that was what I was going to go with. It's just incredible, like where you just bring all these people, and I know it's such a cliche. Everyone says it, different shapes, different sizes. There's room for everyone, but there just really is. You know, whether you're 110 kg or you're 52 kg, you know, there's a place for everyone, and everyone has a strength, and everyone has something that they can bring to the table. I've always I couldn't pinpoint one moment, Cian, to say where I felt being such part of women's rugby, because I just feel it every day. You know, like all my friends, my family, they're the rugby people, and even going to the match the weekend, the people I drank outside the stadium with were the railway girls who, you know, we'll go to an
Yeah.
AL final a few months ago and we poke the head off each other in the final, and then we go for a beer, and that's kind of what it is, like your most competitive team. And when we go to Brighton, then we all sit outside and we have a can and we have the crack. It's little things like that. And I'm not saying men's teams don't do that, but I just think it's so strong in women's teams. Like I was in a pub Friday night chatting to someone who played with Connacht and someone who played with Leinster, and we all just had a drink, you know, after just coming out of an Interpros. I think that's kind of the difference. Now again, might happen in the men's game, but that's what makes me feel like it's such a community, and you know, we all come one together then to support Ireland, hopefully to go far in this tournament. We were hoping. Definitely at the weekend, I think we all maybe had a bit of hope more than we got, but sure, look, we go again next weekend. That's what we said to everyone. We'll go again next weekend anyway. And meet everyone again and have a beer again, and fingers crossed come out on the right side of the result this time.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So, Chloe, touch on there. Why does it seem like it's impossible to hate even your biggest rivals in this version of the, like, is it the culture? Is it crossover? Is it something else entirely?
I don't know.
Oh, don't worry now. There is a couple of people.
I was going to say, don't we all kind of hate the English? I don't know if that's true. Like...
I've
Lessen
tried.
the women's game. Lessen the
I've-
women's game.
I have tried. They just seem pretty
No, I
wonderful.
know they're
It's
actually
pretty
really
so
lovely.
hard.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
I think the English girls like that, they just have some incredible characters. Like when they come up on social
Yeah.
media, like, you know, Maud Muir, like she's
Yeah.
someone I just want to go to the pub with.
Yeah.
Like even the Saturday night we were in the pub, and you know, Claude MacDonald was there, and like went over, said hello, you know what I mean? And it's hard, you know. Now there's some of them, again, you pick out and you'd say, geez, I didn't want to see her, but you know, they are, like, I think social media is a big thing. You know, you're getting to see a lot of people's personalities across the board, and you know, everyone's on TikTok and everyone's doing different challenges, and I think that helps because you get to see such a human side of people that maybe wasn't there before. But yeah, there's definitely people now. I wouldn't have a beer with Cian like that. I'd go head to head with as well, just to be clear. But
Oh yeah, but that's individuals. That's a completely different story.
Name the ball. Name
Always
them.
capable of hating on an individual, certainly. Alice, do you think the smaller spotlight that's currently around the women's game, I mean, it is growing all the time, but it is still kind of smaller than the women's game. Do you think that makes more space for authenticity in the sphere? Or is it maybe just more of a willingness to share the mic?
I think it's the emerging professionalism, right? Like, and I'm very conscious at the real question is, how do we hold this as it grows, right? Because the reality is men's rugby used to be like this, right? Like, I've heard the stories of the old boys in the early 90s and, you know, All Blacks missing trial games because someone got pissed and ended up on a boat out to sea, you know, like that type of stuff, which now seems like a very women's rugby story. But like that type of texture and stuff, I think that's to do with just the amateur age, like that it is, you are yourself and you are a rugby player rather than rugby player being your professionalism. And so therefore you have to create yourself outside of that. You know, the difference too being that, like, we're not picked up at age 16 and put into a high pressure pipeline to develop those skills, and so had our personality beaten out of us from a young age, and taught all the company lines to say thanks to the ladies in the kitchen, you know, game of two hard stuff every halftime speech. Like, it's that type of stuff. You are given more room. I think you're right that there is an element of that small spotlight allowing you to kind of try a little bit more. But yeah, this game is gentrifying, right? Like, we were already kind of laughing about that on the weekend. You know, I made the joke to Carol Isherwood, who I was in the line with as we were waiting for the train. And she was saying, yeah, I've created a monster. I can't even get to my own game, you know, and this is what's happening now. We're not used to this. We're not used to having to leave like an hour before kickoff, leave the pub an hour before kickoff to catch a train. Because no, you just rock up there. What do you mean I have to sit in my allocated seat? Just sit down wherever I want, you know, like all of those type of pieces. And who was it? One of my mates said, remarking to me after the game on Sunday, she was like, who are all these people? I don't know them. You know, like, you expect to see more people you knew in the crowd, and you were suddenly like, I don't know these people. And so what is, you know, used to be very much not even a 6 degree of separation, a 1 degree of separation generally within the women's rugby community. Like, we talk for long enough, we'll have teammates in common. That is shifting because there is, you know, we're growing. The number of us, what is that? I think the last stat I saw, they are projecting us to be very shortly 40% of all players. So that these type of things are then also going to change how we exist in this space. And so how do we, as we grow and we continue, like, we start to take up more of that space, how do we continue to take it up our way? And how do we not get forced into the box that has already been designed? Because it's not working. Men's rugby's failing. You know, it's not making money anywhere. Only the colonies play it. The domestic clubs are falling over every which way. So, like, how do we actually fully back this new product? Because it is an entirely new product, because it can actually be a global game in the women's game in a way which it's almost too late for the men to try to be. The tier stuff is so deeply entrenched. So how do we, out of this moment, out of this World Cup, because we know it's about to be the, you know, massive growth, how do we make sure that's not lopsided? So it's not entrenching. We don't need, like in the men's game, to have a handful of giants. We instead need all of our women to be standing tall. So how do we back them to do that? That's the question for me.
I think the
And I
key
think
for
that's the hard
me,
thing to do.
the key for me personally is that it has to be women leading the women. You
Yeah.
know, this old thing of getting the boys and the Blazers to make the same decision that they made for the men, just carbon copy, put the women in the same spaces, get them doing the same things. I think this World Cup and the build up over the last few years, even the last year alone, has shown that women attract a different crowd. We behave differently. Our culture is different. And we're seeing all of that play out over social media. And we're getting people criticizing the likes of Jasmine Butchers, just, oh, she was friendly with the English players after getting hockeyed by them. Let her do her
How,
thing. Let her
Yeah.
how
behave the way
very
she wants
dare
to
she?
behave. Exactly. Stop putting us, in a box and expecting us to play by the men's standards. Let us define this game ourselves. And if there aren't women at the top making the decisions, we can't do that. We'll be silenced. We'll be, sanitized like the men's game is. We have to be allowed to make the decisions for ourselves and play the game we want to play it, which is, I think, for men, the game and winning is everything. And for women, it's that, and the culture around it is so much more. And like you said, we need to preserve that.
And that's also an opportunity, right? Because all of the men's legacies have been built on like you only make money if your team's winning, right? Like you only sell out stadiums if your team's winning. If you sell out stadiums because people just like to be there, doesn't matter what happens. Doesn't matter what happens to your team results. You can have moments like that on Sunday where, yeah, okay, my team won quite well. But after the game, you would have thought the Irish had won for how much fun they were having. They were definitely having more fun on the train platform than I was when they were throwing to me to try and sing a song. These are, this is all part of it. And like, what are you doing it for? What's sport for? It's entertainment ultimately. Do you know what I mean? So are you not entertained? Are you not having a good time? If you're not having a good time, what the hell are you doing it for? If we're lucky, we get to play the game we loved as children, as adults, in front of other adults to keep them entertained. But I think sometimes we get a bit too precious about what this sport really is,
I agree, absolutely. And I think if we're going to look at the Irish game, I certainly was just bloody happy to be there. The scoreline in the end, I was like, yeah, whatever. This atmosphere is incredible. So looking at the game, yes, we got well beaten. I think, those last two tries were probably unnecessary in terms of conceding them. But I think as a group, I think we were probably a little bit tired, Chloe, going into that game.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's probably a sign of lack in squad depth. We've brought 32 people, 5 haven't played yet. So I think, and then obviously, Aoife Wafer is one of those 5. Elena Perry's ruled out to that 6, so now you're down to 26 people. Grace Moore, Brittany have been involved every week. Aoife Dalton, there's a lot of players there who've, and it is like, and I know every team is doing it, but I think a lot of other teams have definitely rotated their squads a lot better than we have, which we knew, right? We knew when we lost Erin King, and we knew when we lost Dorothy Wall, and we knew when Aoife Wafer was coming over injured that we are going to be run tight. But I think that's something we saw, which leads me to believe, versus Spain, should we have added 1 or 2 more in to keep a couple of fresher bodies? But when you look at it then, I don't think we could have afforded to do that because we're carrying so many injuries. Tricky was only back, and then, she's rested for that game, and then they had to bring her back in this game. So I think that's kind of what we saw, was a little bit of tiredness. And then, to be honest, just a lack of clinical execution in certain areas. We had opportunities to score in the game. I knew it on Sunday, and then I watched it back today, and I thought the exact same. I thought we had moments where we still might not have won the game, but it would have been a different outcome. If we had scored in that first 12-minute period where we had a lot of possession, the outlook is a lot different. And look, the last 2 tries were the last 2 tries. They were what they were. But yeah, we definitely had opportunities. I just think it was definitely tired bodies, and then tired bodies and tired minds leads to poor decision making, which I thought we saw a lot of, especially defensively. We had a 72% tackle rate. I don't think you can miss 28% of your tackles and expect to win any kind of game in a World Cup, especially. And then that, just people, silly things like the very first try, we're kind of on a scramble, and then Niamh Jones dips into the ruck to try slow it down. But for me, like you could see it. I was sitting in the seat saying, wrong decision, get around the corner, start pulling width, because as we know, and we spoke about it last week, New Zealand just had these sparkles of absolute magic and unbelievable players who you give them a metre of space and they'll punish you. And that's what they did. And that's what they did all day. So, look, we've a big drawn board to go back to, I think, because France aren't too far different. You know, they've magic players as well. And if we make those poor decisions, we'll definitely be punished again.
So I think we saw the Black Ferns carry more, they beat more defenders, they made more offloads. It looked like, to me, Ireland were trying to front up physically in midfield, and at times, like you said, they didn't get around the corner. They didn't get wide enough. We narrowed a lot of the time, and we were just punished. Was that we were out muscled or out foxed?
I think a bit of both. Like, I think in defence, we were probably out muscled, and then in our attack, I thought we were very one dimensional. You know, like even there was that one stage where we make a line break up the edge. We hit like, you know, a forward off running off 9. And then we're so flat in the middle from Dana to the pod that we just got smashed. And all the ground we made on the line break was just wasted, you know. So that's where you need your back swinging around, line up space. Because like that off a line break, you know, defenses generally jam in. The space is probably actually on the other edge. So it's how do you get the ball there, you know, quick enough while committing defenders to it. And I just thought we missed those opportunities. And yeah, I just felt we were so flat. And then New Zealand were smashing us. Like the amount of people who got smashed. There was one pass that was thrown to Tricky. You know, one of them hospital passes where you kind of
absolutely
you'd get less spare ribs than a Chinese, like, and I just thought she was gone. And she threw it back, like she just fumbled it. We ended up retaining the possession, but it was just a sign of kind of what happened all day. Way too flat, weren't kind of punching onto the ball. And then like that, just couldn't get any go forward off it, bar like a few moments of kind of magic, like Aoife Dalton makes a kind of break out of nothing, Niamh O'Dowd does, but none of them came to fruition, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It did very much feel like, we were so flat and they were up in our faces. And I think at times we saw Dana just panic when somebody was in her face and just shovel the ball on, and it was not going to anybody who was expecting the ball, and then we didn't know what to do with it. At one point, we're on our try line and Niamh O'Dowd gets it, doesn't know what to do with it. Absolute panic stations. You know, we're not thinking several steps ahead in attack. We're not organized in attack. Alice, we definitely saw the Black Ferns just, you know, playing the game their way, dictating the rhythm, dictating the pace of the game. Do you think they're anywhere near full stretch yet, or are they still getting warmed up? And, you know, it was 40-0, probably just, you know, them getting into the competition still.
I would say this is the beginning of the click. We have to remember too that we've got to play a couple of players that are currently out. So Kaipo Olsen-Baker being a key one for us in terms of number 8. She's been our preferred starter, you know, ahead of this tournament, and so her going down in that first game, it's going to be very interesting to see now, like how that shuffles. It was also interesting, you know, I was talking to my lovely co-host of our podcast, Liz Elder, this morning, and she was saying that she believes that this match just gone was a bit of a test between Leila Sa'i and Kennedy Tukuatu as to who that extra 7, you know, cover is, or loose forward cover is, and she reckons Kenny might have edged it in that match. So it's interesting. I think there's still a couple of combinations. You also look at the outside backs. I mean, Aisha Letienga, she is also returning to play right from a niggle as well. So, you know, she came on, she made great impact off the bench. Is she now going to be playing that role, or is Braxton, like, what are we doing with that? Like, there are still a couple of questions around how it is we utilize this depth and to best effect. But I guess this is also going to be a case of horses for courses, right? And this is the benefit, like you're talking about, the benefit of having that depth. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of the benefit of the squad versus 2022, that we actually do now have the potential for options, that there is now a different style that you might look at doing depending on who you're playing. I mean, you know, Reese, Pody Lane, and Ruahe Demont are a beautiful 19 combination, but like Maya Joseph and Kelly Brazier aren't bad, and we also saw Renee Holmes have a jam. So these are all people and, you know, remixes that we can look at doing. that are going to be really interesting. I thought the defense was some of the best I've seen us play. When we're talking about that, we think we finished the game with 12 dominant tackles. Like, they were hissing.
Yeah.
They were hissing for that one. And a lot about the attack, and goodness me, have I seen that try from like 1,000 different angles. That last one, I'm so sorry, but like the defense for me was like the standout, actually, because we had you lovely Irish running a lot of meters, but most of them sideways, which was then just making absolutely no space for your outsides, which we know, if we're watching Irish women's rugby, it's on the edge where you've got an edge. So taking that opportunity away for have that strike power down the sides, it definitely was smart play. It's going to be interesting to see, I guess, how they change things up for this weekend. It's going to have to be a different beast. But yeah, I think there's still places to grow, but I think that click and that confidence is going to be taking a lot on from here. I think of that try that I've now seen from 100 different angles, I actually think now that I've seen it from so many, the most important line that was actually run on that was that of Laura Bayfield's, and that she was the forward that made the first backdoor pass across to the edge in the 22. She stayed involved. If you watch it again, she's on that inside. She's a lock, and she's keeping pace with Georgia Miller on the outside, who we know has gas. And she's right there behind Maya Joseph. When Maya had to stretch to catch that ball, if she hadn't, it would have landed in Laura Bayfield's hands. And if Maya had been caught by you, she would have been right there over top. And when I was talking with Les about that this morning, she's like, yeah, we'll see that line, that support line from Laura Bayfield, that's what you wins you tournaments. It's not necessarily that initial break. It's the fact that everybody is running to be an option, whether they are or not. They're running with the same energy and the same intent, and that's what runs at home.
I know, but in fairness, she had 2 yellows last week. She had to be fresh.
She also had to
Fair.
prove a point to all the Mama Vaipulu fans, because a lot of people were salty about her getting the nod with one cap over Mama, because she was bloody fantastic for the Blues. So a lot of us were going, oi, oi, girl, you better turn up. And yep, she got the memo.
I love how you said there as well, if you watch it back again, no. I'd rather not, thanks. I've had enough. I've seen it enough, thanks.
Fair. I know. I do feel like there were definitely other tries scored this weekend. I think World Rugby can come down and maybe clip one of those.
It would be nice. Yeah, it'd be nice if we had scored one of those too. Chloe, looking at the depth that we have lost since the Six Nations, do you think if we had the likes of Darrow in there, Erin King, Aoife Wafer fit and ready, that it could have been a different result? We could have got on the scoreboard. We could have challenged the scoreboard a little bit better.
Yeah, look, it's ifs and buts and cans and woulds and shoulds. You know what I mean? Like, I'd have taken the 3 points at the start of the game as well, just to settle us. But like, I think we'd have been in a much better position. But then the New Zealand jumped the standard up a little bit more because you're in that challenge. It's so hard to say. Like, but I think like those players were definitely missed. Like New Zealand turned the ball over 8 times. We turned it over only 2. We know Erin King is, that's one of her bread and butters. We know Aoife Wafer is quite strong in a ruck as well. So you'd like to think they would have made a difference. But, here's the reality. We don't have them, and we're going into a quarterfinal now, so it doesn't really matter. Like, we can sit here and wonder what would have happened, but it's not going to make a difference to what happens on Sunday versus France.
So you called probably a good few months back now, you said we'll face France in the quarterfinal and we'll beat them. Do you still stand by that?
Oh, I thought about this today, and I was like, my heart says yes, because I just feel like I'm probably sitting. I don't say I'm a cynic. I like to think I'm a realist, and I'm trying to be really realistic about it. Prior to the game, the weekend, I would have said yes. I know South Africa weren't up to much the weekend, but France were shit hot. Like, they were. Bourdon Sansus has just said, I had my 2 games off now for my little ban, and I am back, and I am here to wreak havoc. And that is what she did. And she
doesn't miss a step.
She was unbelievable. Like, she was class. My heart says yes, that we have a big performance in us. but I need to see like the injury list. Like obviously the casualties could be, that could have a massive impact. I haven't heard yet like of, who's definitely in, who's definitely out. So like if we are to lose Stacey, Tricky, even with Aoife Wafer coming back, like that could be worrying. Even for me, Eve didn't look great at all. Like she took a couple of knocks and I was saying, Jesus, she needs to go off. So my head says France, my heart is going to go Ireland, and I'm definitely going to go and shout as hard as I can for us, because I'd love to see us do it. But I think France might just be a little bit too strong.
Alice, looking ahead to your quarterfinal 1, playing South Africa. South Africa are, I suppose, performing really, really well in this competition and with a hell of an attitude. But is it a bit of a David and Goliath situation?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think this is the thing about World Cups though too, right? Like we each have our own version of success when we're coming in, and there's different markers that we're trying to reach for. And so I think for the South Africans, and I mean this with absolutely no disrespect, I think that making this quarterfinal is their version of success at this tournament. Like that was obviously the big goal for them with what they've been trying to grow and develop for. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for the further growth of the game, though, that like luck has conspired to put us two against each other. I think in terms of soft fans that are potentially like looking at the Springbok women for the first time, the fact that they're playing New Zealand is a huge potential for growth. They love playing us, right? Like that's a famous rivalry for a rugby nation. And so I saw the boys trying to bandwagon it because they're trying to call this weekend a doubleheader because apparently the boys are playing too. Who cares? Yours is less important than a World Cup quarter. Sorry, men. But yeah, so we're more involved in this one. But I think, yeah, look, the last time we played, and I think the only other time our top teams have played each other was 2010, the 2010 World Cup. And at that time, it was similar to that French score. I think it was about 55 to 10, so something close enough. I'm imagining that it might be looking at something the same. But then it's also, like it's hard to tell. Our team is so like we are France as well, right? Like who knows? Who knows what type of hits we start getting up? We're the type of team that you make 3 mistakes and we could be up 30 points. You just don't know what they could end up doing. But likewise, I think that it's actually great for us that we are playing South Africa in this quarter, because I think had it gone the other way and we ended up playing Italy, I don't think that would have got us as physically prepared as we need to be if we're going to continue in the tournament. I think we need to have that direct physical like style of play that also runs some offloads off it. So that's Canada rugby, baby. Like so if we are going to have to be looking at shaping up beyond that, of course, there's always only one job to do at once. But if it does go well and you remain employed, that is a great, a warm up for us. So I think that, yeah, odds should absolutely be in our favor. But it's fun that this hasn't played out that much before. So we really get to kind of feel each other out, and fun for the fans that this gets to be a new chapter in an old rivalry, and one that develops. So yeah, I think it's great for the women's game at large that this gets to be a quarterfinal.
Right, so we're at the real business end of the episode where we get to see the inner workings of Cian's mind, and left a little bit disturbed. Cian, lucky dip.
Yeah, look, if I let you see the real workings of my mind, I'd be banned from the airways. I'd be probably arrested, actually. Yeah, given what people given that it gets done for wearing t-shirts these days. It's the lucky dip. You pick a number between 1 and 15, and you get a random question off my sheet of horrors here. And since Chloe knows exactly what she's doing and apparently hates it, she
Always
gets
first.
to go first.
Yeah, I just don't ever get to go second in this game. It's very unfair, actually. I'm going to go number 6.
Number 6. All right. Number 6. What's the most unusual place you've ever ended up because you got completely lost?
That
you know
feels like a
what's worse?
tame question.
It's really tame, but I'm actually so bad with directions. Like I'm the person, if you're going somewhere on Google Maps where I walk with my phone like this, and I like so that I know who the person is, and I'll still go the wrong way.
You like Joey, you need to get into the map.
Yeah, I need to be in the map. Yeah. Oh, Cian, you have me stumped now. I actually I don't really know. I don't know.
You
So I'm
didn't,
going
you
to
didn't
change
know
the
when you were
question.
there either.
I didn't know when I was there. I'm going to change the question and just tell you that I once asked a blind person for directions and then followed them.
Did you get to
That-
where you were going?
Oh, complete wrong way down a Mossford somewhere. Complete wrong way.
jeez.
And what's worse is I didn't even know they were blind. Like until one of the girls was like, "Did you not see the dog on the stick?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that was that." So yeah. So sorry, Cian. I can't answer your questions. Just made me own. Just made my own.
Situational awareness
Quite all
issue.
right. That is the much better answer. Oh, and here was I thinking, thank God, Chloe finally got a softball one for herself. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, Alice, I think you get the idea of the game now. So
Okay.
number between 1 and 15, and 6 is gone, and
Okay.
we'll see what comes up.
I'll pick my number, which was number 2.
Number 2. What's something you believed about elite rugby before you got there and turned out to be completely wrong?
Well, I already told you about England and how I thought they had their shit together.
Oh, true.
Like,
Yeah.
and then I realized, oh no, same stuff is kind of Mickey Mouse everywhere. What did I believe? I definitely thought that things just in general were going to be like a lot flasher, right? Like that I thought all the coaches and things were definitely going to know what they were talking about, and that everybody, like, just if you get to the next level, now will be like, now will be the time where you don't have to blow the whistle on this person, and you won't have to shelter that person. I thought this will be the oasis that I finally came upon the shores. And no, unfortunately, like, it's kind of turtles all the way down, right? Like it's the same, it's the same 5 guys wearing a trench coat trying to tell you what the offside line is, and you're like, I don't know if you know, my
Yeah.
dude. Like, I really am gonna have to ask some questions. I had the number of arguments I had in the time that I played in England around step moves, like launch plays. As like how long the English love a launch play to be if you're having a move over there. There'd be like, I don't know, I'm not joking you, like more than 6 phases off a launch play. And I'd say to him, what if the space is in front of me after the second phase? And they go, no, you're going to go through the moves. I said, as if I'm going to go through the moves. I'm going to go straight ahead. Like, what are you talking about? So I don't know. I think I just thought, I guess like all kids, when you look at big kids or adults, you think everyone has it figured out. And then you get up there and you're like, it's all kind of just people trying their best. Or maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me about 40 years to figure out that everyone's faking it all the time.
Yeah,
Everyone's
you can
just
get away
pretending.
with a lot. You can get away with
You
a lot
can.
if you have a confidence voice, and you can get away with a lot in this game if you have a New Zealand accent. That's all I'll say.
And if you've got a confident New Zealand accent, ooh,
Look at good luck everyone else.
you're telling tales from yourself here now, Alice.
Alice, thank you so much. You survived the lucky dip, and thank you for joining us. I know you're incredibly busy running the length and breadth of the country over there. Chloe, as ever, thank you for your detailed insights, despite the exhaustion from last weekend. A big challenge awaits us in Exeter next Sunday. We take on the mighty, if unpredictable, France. Who knows what's going to happen? Everybody's going to go over and travel well again and see how we go. So we'll be back next week with more insights. Follow us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss out. Until then, keep on rocking.